Welcome back to the Tailosive Tech Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We couldn't find a way to squeeze Randy and Mike into the same day episode, but this is good because we've all had time to digest. We're consuming all of this news, digesting it. Today we find out what Mike thinks.
I'm glad that you ended the sentence with that.
You didn't like where that was going, I could tell.
Yeah, unfortunately, me and Randy, I think, are tag teaming at this point into the ring, out of the ring. But we'll get that.
Who's going to tag me out? I'm ready. Somebody.
No, you stay in here. Boom. You're supposed to be in here. It's your podcast.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel like you should be the happiest, specifically with Sequoia, because they literally straight up did exactly what you suggested like the week before.
I was very, very excited about that news, specifically with being able to remote into your iPhone. I didn't have any insider information about that, by the way. This was all just a customer need.
You did, though. You did.
Even though, well, I mean, I would still use it, and like we're doing an old format for other reasons, which we'll get into later for how we record the podcast. But for the new, I think it still applies that it would be nice to be able to access my phone while we're doing things, and being able to just drag and drop things from the iPhone window on macOS to Final Cut or the desktop or whatever you want, and vice versa, I think is amazing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great feature.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be using it whenever we record podcasts or if I need to transmit some info and I don't want to do the whole plugin. I wonder if this will make your recordings a little bit easier, Drew, with being able to just drag and drop image or files or anything else from, even though it's recorded, I think, on the Photos app. Would be nice if you could just grab that file, share it onto macOS without even having to touch the phone.
Yeah. I would be curious if it's more consistent than AirDrop, because AirDrop is very seasonal for me. It'll go like 4 weeks without issue, and it's really fast and reliable, and then I'll have another 4 weeks where it's like every single time it fails, and it'll get 80% of the way done and then crash. And the inconsistency of it is very frustrating, because it's like when it works really well. But when it doesn't work, it's like, okay, should I switch to plugging in the old-fashioned way, or should I just try to AirDrop again? And if AirDrop failed every time, it would actually be easier, because then I would just say, okay, don't use AirDrop. But the fact that it does work sometimes and doesn't work the others is like, I can't make up my mind. So if this process kind of can streamline that or simplify that, yeah, I would definitely use it all the time. And it's also, I think, going to be particularly helpful for a lot of the iPhone apps that have features, and specifically a lot of security protocols that you can't get on their web versions as easy. And a lot of these sites, specifically Meta, likes to make social media apps that have not as many features or not as great features on the web, and they don't want to make a Mac app for it. So the funny Apple roundabout way of getting around this was like, first they said, okay, now the Mac can run iPhone and iPad apps natively. But then the devs are like, no, you can't. So they opt out of that so that you can't put it on the Mac. So then Apple was like, okay, now you can just control the whole phone from the Mac. So it's like, good luck getting out of that one. So yeah, that's a feature that
I didn't think about that.
Pretty much sells Sequoia. Yeah, I think specifically there's a lot of two-factor authentication things. That's like, go to your phone to approve.
All the Google stuff or Google-related stuff. It's just open the YouTube app on your phone. I wonder how that will go. If it will recognize the iPhone mirroring as a valid approach, or if it will physically tell you, that's great and all, but really get on your phone or something.
I hope there's no way for the dev to know which is being used. That would be the goal. It'd be like, they're like, is this on your phone? And you just be like, yes.
Ask app not to track.
Even though your phone's in the other room. Right, ask app not to track. So, yeah, actually, it specifically has come up a lot with my line of work, because I'm running social media Tello, side note, and I've had to log into social media accounts that aren't technically, mine. I didn't create them. So they're like, there's two-factor authentication on these accounts, and if sometimes when I want to log in, it has to send a text message code to the CEO, which I don't want to do when I'm just trying to play around with settings or make a post. Like, I don't want to text the CEO every time I log in. So oftentimes I've been like, okay, I just won't sign in on my computer because I don't want the two-factor authentication thing to pop up.
Sure.
But I am signed in already on the phone. So just being, yeah, it just made so much sense. It's cool that you suggested it like right before the event. And then I feel like that stole the show for Sequoia. Was there any other features of Sequoia that
The window
excited
tiling
you?
is something I've actually been waiting for. It's something that's been
Oh, that
on
is a good one.
Windows for a while. Makes sense. Window tiling. But it's
They
been something
focused on
that
that.
I love to do because I still interface with it at work. We typically use Windows software, sometimes other things.
Yeah,
But being
sure.
able to just drag tiles or windows to corners and then they auto size to either a quarter of it or half of it or whatever orientation you
Yes.
want is great on I'm not going to take a picture of what I'm looking at in front of me in terms of the amalgamation of tiles, but I have to.
Yeah.
What's great about macOS is you can resize it whatever way, and same goes for Windows, but it doesn't do it automatically. You have to drag it to the location and then adjust the sizing to your exact liking. So being able to just make that quicker by something that has been existing on Windows devices for such a long time at this point. I
Yeah.
think that was kind of the theme of a lot of the show was things that have existed on Android and Windows and other devices finally coming to Apple devices this year. And it's
True.
just great
I agree.
quality of life updates like window tiling. And that's, I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of great things, but yeah, I agree. macOS definitely took the show for me as well, with specifically mirroring and also the tiling. Those things are probably my two gold stars for this event.
Nice. Yeah, I would say that my only I think there were third-party Mac apps that did the same thing, which is why it was kind of low-hanging fruit in a way. They like on the web page they could have you said automatically and it made me think automatically. That would make for a great Hey, I have marketing experience now, Mike. You can't. You,
All you made is just a
you
dad
can't.
joke, which I have been purveyor of for years, even though I'm not a
Have
dad.
you seen the number of dad jokes on Apple's webpage?
I mean, they've been doing it since like early 2000s,
It's
right?
ridiculous.
It's never
Some
ended.
of them just drive me nuts.
Like,
Um,
Apple Intelligence, AI for the rest of us. Wait, that wasn't a joke.
AI for the rest of us with A17 Pro chips. Yeah.
Right. Uh,
Should have. That was interesting wording, but yeah. I'm trying to think. I was looking at the splash page, kind of highlighting all the macOS changes. Oh, that's right. My only pushback with the resizing thing
mhm.
is that I hope it's optional because sometimes I know this is kind of a specific use case, but there are times when I'm live streaming and I intentionally will put a window off screen so that it hides certain content.
Sure.
I'm guessing Apple's response to that would be, well, now it's easier to just share one window instead of the whole display. So they would probably just tell me I'm wrong for wanting to share the entire screen. I should just share one app at a time. But
Right. I am curious as well whether they force it to be on the screen or if you're able to drag it off the screen, just like Windows devices. Because I do that as well. I've got multiple screens, but even so, sometimes I drag it off to an edge where there's not another screen adjacent. And it's just off
yeah,
into the ether, but I'm only seeing, I don't know, maybe half or a quarter of what's on that tile or whatever. And that's okay
yeah,
because that's all I need to see. It's
yeah,
just a number or some information that I need to uh, review and or recollect, but it's not something that needs to encompass the whole entire screen. So I agree. I hope Apple
yeah,
doesn't uh, quote unquote ruin it in a way. I wouldn't say ruin is probably the right word, but more of just didn't adopt the window tiling well. But I'm sure that will most likely
yeah.
be a toggle. And if not, then I hope that they add that toggle in
Add
the
it.
next
Yeah.
OS update.
The other thing that really surprised me was how far back Sequoia is supported. I was totally convinced my iMac Pro was gonna lose support this year.
Hmm.
Like I bought it in 2017. That's we're looking at 7 years, and then Sequoia would last into next year, so that would be looking at 8 years of support. Um, and yeah, they're still going, and they seem to have given it most of the features. So I'm like, Intel Max, you're not alone. You're not being left out. So they're missing some intelligence features, but we could get into that
Yeah.
later.
Well, you mention it now, so maybe we should address it. Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, let's just do it now.
You got spot
Sure.
on in your video, which we all laughed
Mm-hmm.
at least in your community. Of, oh, Drew actually guessed it right, but to be fair, it was staring us in the face the whole time. But
To be fair, it wasn't even a guess. I never said I think they'll call it that. I just was like, that would be a gimmicky marketing shtick that was funny that I thought of when making a skit. It's like Apple wouldn't like the term artificial.
right, it sounds a
A is for
little
Apple.
not ugly, but a little crude or crass, maybe.
Yeah,
It doesn't sound elegant or smooth.
little bit.
So what's funny about
It's a
this,
very old acronym. Yeah.
right, bringing up Apple Intelligence, it's funny because I was watching along with you and the rest of the people in your stream on that day while I was at work, and then I had a meeting. So I dropped the stream, went to go to the meeting and all that, listened to the meeting. And
Yeah.
at that time, I think they were just getting done with whatever the last product they had in there, whether it was the watchOS or
I think it
iPad.
was Mac.
maybe. I think it was iPad. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
was
right.
that-
They were getting done with the iPad features, which that's another thing that we can get into later. But
Oh,
it was
boy.
funny because it was just the hype of the calculator app on the iPad, and then I leave, and then I get back and I just see AI generated imagery of a sloth with a suit, and then the ugliest looking recreation of someone's mother in a superhero costume. And I was just so caught off guard. I'm like, I left for 30 minutes. What the heck happened? And your mood, like,
Yeah.
I could tell the dichotomy between very excited Drew
Yes.
to what are we looking at? Why do I care about this? And it was
Such a fundamental shift in the middle part of
Exactly.
the keynote. It was total Fiddler on the Roof. Like, you left at the right time. First half of Fiddler on the Roof is great, really fun, enjoyable movie. Second half, don't even bother watching. It's horrible. It's depressing. It's so sad. So when
not
we
wrong.
showed the movie to my wife for the first time, when the wedding scene happens and they're all partying and celebrating, and I'm like, and that's the end, and we just hit eject, and I was like, that's what we should have done at Dub Dub. We just hit the eject button right after iPadOS. Call it a day. Oh,
yeah. I like that. I don't really see too much controversy with partnering with Chat or OpenAI and ChatGPT because it is a button that you have to select to enable. Iris,
well, not everybody knew that.
apparently not. Some people.
A few billionaires.
Oh my gosh. So being able to have that behind a button that is pretty much giving consent to use ChatGPT and all its features, and which would be transmitting
Yeah.
some of that info or most of that info to OpenAI. I wonder if that's only
Yeah.
one-time use or if it's you have to either. Okay, what am I trying to get at? Whether you have to keep on pressing
I
that
get what
button
you're
if you
saying.
want to use GPT, or
You do.
if it's only one single time and then you have to toggle it off somewhere in your settings later.
That's not what Tim Cook phrased it like
Okay.
in interviews. They explicitly stated that you're using OpenAI actively. You have to press it every single time. It's not like it's always on now. And secondly, it does not require you to make an account with them. So they can't build a profile on this iPhone keeps asking these questions. It is a anonymous pinging when you're trying to get information that is separate from Apple's large language model, which is all being focused on device, and if it is in the cloud, it's super encrypted end to end and super hard to figure out. There's no data being stored on you.
Yeah, it's like a personal
I
cloud and
understood
all
the
that,
whole-
which I thought was funny.
Yeah. I understood the whole privacy emphasis, and I think I get what Apple's doing, but I still was annoyed with the whole concept. Like, I feel like talking about Apple Intelligence and how it works has occupied like 80% of the media, but the 20%, there's a lot of talk about how it works, And in my opinion, the end result is very uneventful and uninteresting.
Sure.
Like, there's a lot of this extra talk going on. We're making sure it's private and secure and it uses ChatGPT, but there's a partnership going on, but we're not paying them and they're not paying us. All this talk about a handful of features. That's how
Yeah,
I'm
I
feeling
don't
about it.
see
I don't know
much
about you, but
utility in like Image Playground or Genmoji or anything like that. But stuff
I don't
like
either.
cleaning up photos with the Image Wand or whatever else the Image Wand can do to make your photos
Which is
just.
not a new thing at all.
No, Google's been doing it for a while, but this is Apple's version of it. And of course, like they say in multiple interviews, they want to take time to make something a lot more smoothed out and refined as a product for consumers. So
Yeah.
I was perfectly fine with that. Or like the audio recording summaries, I think is really great for either phone calls, notes, or anything else. It's a great way to digest paragraphs and paragraphs of information down into a few sentences. You would think Elon Musk would like that because he made the same comment in his shareholder meeting yesterday about this, saying paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and minutes and minutes and minutes of people giving their 2 cents on what his company should be doing, his automotive company should be doing. Yet he's bashing the same company that is solving it, saying, no,
Well,
this
he
is
didn't
bad.
watch it. I'm sure he didn't watch it because if he had, he wouldn't have said what he said.
Right.
That's why he got community noted so many times in a row. It was like, that's, you literally did. He was convinced that they were just turning on ChatGPT at the system level so that anytime you asked the voice assistant or anything really for help, it was just in the background using ChatGPT. That's how he interpreted it based on his tweets.
Sure. And I get
Whereas,
some of the caution with employees being able to use that in the workplace because even though it is behind a button that you have to press, you can't stop employees from pressing that button unless you're forcibly either taking away their phones or you're making sure that they don't press the button at work with some written rule that you have in your Twitter buildings or X buildings or whatever. So that could also still
it's
be a
true.
concern that he has.
It is, but there's also really not much, in my opinion, that would stop someone from just downloading the app or pulling up the ChatGPT website. It's like
Yeah.
these are options that are already available.
Agreed.
Apple just integrated it in a simpler way. And he took that as, oh, anybody can now. It's like anybody can use it now. There's apps out there, there's websites. Anybody
Android phones can
do
use it
that.
too.
See, that was the funniest thing about his little tirade to me was he was like, I will stop using all Apple products and no one at my companies can use Apple products. And I was like, you think privacy and safety is somehow going to be better on Android? I was like, they're using Gemini. It's the same kind of crap. And there's actually way less of a privacy emphasis over there,
Right.
as far as what the third-party devs can do, and as far as what Google loves collecting data. They've
You don't
always
say.
been a fan of data collection, whereas Apple, at least, I personally think they hype up their privacy emphasis a bit much, but still, actively, if we just look at the financials, Apple gets their revenue from hardware sales. They're trying to get more from software sales, but the fundamental lifeline of Apple as a business, as a company, is still profit generated from hardware. It is not a data building company that gets revenue through ads or through search or whatever. Whereas Google fundamentally is. Like, Google's whole business model, everything they do is fundamentally fueled by monitoring people's behavior and pitching it to advertiser groups. Again, it's the whole, if it's free, you're the product.
Right.
And with Apple, even though I'm not a fan really of any of the intelligence features that I saw, like personally, I think they're all very, very techy. Like, I do not visualize a lot of people in the business world using the email summarize feature. I just, I know people that don't even like using a lot of the Gmail predictive stuff that it does. And it's like, yeah, people are just too picky a lot of the time with how things are worded and phrased. And I just don't see a ton of people just highlighting a whole email to make this more concise or make it more lighthearted. You're fired.
Here's a Genmoji to accompany it.
Here's a T-Rex wearing
Sad
a
cowboy
dress on a surfboard. I'm like, when would I ever use that emoji? That's the crazy thing. Apple's always been into these like, make your own emoji, make your own emoji, and it's like 90% of the emojis used are the same, like 30.
Yeah.
It's like 30 emojis that accompany for 95% of all emojis used in the world. And then we have like millions and millions of these. And now there's just an infinite number of Genmojis, which I'm going to be very curious to see what happens to those when you text an Android user.
Right. I thought of that as well immediately whenever they showed them. I thought, oh, that's great. Wait, what are Android users going to see? Because what they didn't mention in this is that RCS messaging support is here now. So there is a little bit more security and connectivity between the messaging services of iMessage and RCS, or I guess Android users that support RCS. But what do custom emojis look like? Is it just going to be an image that kind of pops up in the middle of the text? It's going to be, if you have like a sentence, the Genmoji, and then another sentence, is it going to be sent when it's sent to the Android user or RCS user? Is it going to be a sentence and then a custom image that is like its own separate message, and then afterward another sentence? I think that's maybe the technical way that I would think this would go around, because
it's still weird though. It's still it's just gonna come across very bizarre.
I agree. I do like the fact that iMessage users, when they message each other, can be a little bit more customized with their messages or Genmojis or whatever, because even I run into some circumstances where there's not an emoji for whatever thing that I wanted to convey in that message to either you, Randy, or someone else. But if there isn't an emoji, I then just jump to a GIF at that point, because then the GIF probably conveys what I'm talking about. If there's not a GIF for that, well, then I just either don't send it with a emoji or GIF, or I just find an image online of whatever reference I'm trying to make.
That's a good point, actually. I typically, like I said, only use an assortment of maybe 20 or 30 emojis. And that covers most texting. And if I need something more funny than that, I would flock towards a GIF. And that's something I've always felt was very weak on iMessage. The GIF selection has never been very detailed compared to other platforms. I think Discord's is the best, to be honest.
They source it, I believe, from Giphy, in which I actually added Giphy as one of the options that you could select in the plus menu in iMessage.
Oh, I need to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
See, that would make a much bigger difference in my life.
Right. That makes it a lot better, so then I could find a GIF. I don't have to go to Giphy's website, find the GIF that I want, hold my finger down it to copy it, because that's a nice feature, is you just hold down your finger on it, it's like copied. And then you go over and then paste it, and it's there. It's much easier just to look it up in iMessage. And if it's not there, then, well, now you know. Then I guess if you really want to find that GIF, you do a Google search, and it'll find it somewhere else on Tenor or whatever.
Can you think of a Genmoji that would be useful? I'm trying to think of an example. It's like, I need an emoji of this, but I don't have it.
Starlink would be a nice Genmoji, honestly.
Do you think it would make that if you asked?
Or I don't know, maybe asking, hey, I want a Genmoji of Jimmy Carter, because Randy apparently has this affinity towards Jimmy Carter.
There is one. It's the skull emoji.
My God. I'm kidding. He's not dead yet, Drew.
I'm just excited that you can react to emojis with the skull. I mean, react to messages with the skull.
That is nice as well. It's no longer limited to, was it the 6 or 7 different reactions? It's now emojis or Genmojis or whatever you want, I guess.
Right. I'm getting the impression that because this OpenAI partnership was so kind of last second, they didn't have much time or many ideas for the whole Apple Intelligence pitch. They knew they had to say something about it. They had to talk about it. But I'm just scrolling through the web page now, and I still very much feel like, again, we're talking a lot about how it works and the secureness of it and how it's different and when it uses OpenAI and all that. But looking through the page, I'm like, okay, really though, what does this actually enable? And like you said, the The image playground is pretty cringe and pretty embarrassing in my opinion. And then like primary notifications, is that really something we need large language models for? Like, this text is relevant. Put that at the top. You know, ah, I struggle to see like they don't feel like that massive of a feature set. And there's a couple of neat ones, but restricting that to just the M chips or the A17 Pro feels pretty petty to me.
Yeah, I see. Well, I think in the podcast I listened to with you and Randy's reactions, I understand the
Yeah.
annoyance of, well, the 17 Pro or 17 Pro, the A17X,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
it is, the 15
No,
Pro
it's
can do it, but
A17
not
Pro.
the 15 regular. And my argument to that
Yes.
is, well, if the 15 regular wasn't able to do that, then that means the 14 Pro, my phone, could do it. And then you have to draw a line somewhere. So then I guess the next logical line is at the 14 Pro. That means 14 regular doesn't get it. And then it's just going to be the same argument at the end of the day. So they had to draw a line somewhere, is what I'm seeing, and what they wanted to
That's
do.
fair.
And I guess what their decision was is, let's just draw the line at our latest hardware. So then people buy it and we get a better sale rather than 15 Pro, because we don't really sell that on our site anymore, unless you're doing.
You mean 14 Pro?
Sorry, yeah,
But
14 Pro. Thank you.
yeah.
So they had to draw a line. I figured, okay, 15 Pro, whatever. That's what's going to get you the most money, because people are going to want to buy that for the AI features if they really want to use it. And those are people that are highly tech enthusiast people. So
Yeah.
I wasn't too bothered by it, but I understand the
Interesting.
annoyance.
I agree they had to draw a line. I just think the line is in a very, very high place.
Well, they've done it
compared to
before.
previous,
It's in their language, Drew. They've done this in the past with the iPad and many other things, macOS or Macs and all that. iPhones in the past as well. I've seen some of these barring of features, software, pretty much. No, yeah, barring of software features through software. That makes sense. I'm having a stroke apparently,
Yeah.
but pretty much what I'm getting at is that this is normal for Apple, and it's just them being a little bit, I wouldn't say greedy, but tactical with their approach to who can access this software that's really new. It's going to have a lot of issues, and how can they minimize the impact, I guess.
I think it can be both tactical and greedy at the same time.
Okay.
It's just like in the past, usually those software features were hand in hand with some kind of hardware. It was like, well, this has the pro camera, so there's a few software features that only the pros have access to. And usually I feel like that happens when the hardware comes out. Whereas maybe I'm feeling different because there was no new hardware. They're just saying after the fact, the phones everybody's already bought, that the fact that they're still selling hardware that can't run Apple Intelligence today, that is brand new and not that much cheaper than the Pro, like a 15 Plus with some sales tax and some storage is easily, that's a $1,000 iPhone that will not get the ability to text to Cyrus.
Right.
I'm like, what? Like, some of these things definitely don't feel like they should be restricted to just the pros. Like, I don't think everything they talked about really requires that intricate of a large language model. Or, again, I feel like it's this whole branding of Apple Intelligence is kind of encouraging or perpetuating the new trend that I'm against of let's software lock more and more so that it convinces people to buy the new thing. And yes, they've done it in the past, but it's getting worse, is I guess what I'm saying. It's expanding more, and this is a trend I'm not a fan of.
Right. And this is something that you pretty much were a proponent of predicting. You predicted this a while back, and we had many discussions about it on software locking, or even so to the extent of making updates to such as like macOS a paid feature.
Yeah.
In which I was very much against as well. So I too am in this boat of I don't like that. But for something like Apple Intelligence and even our reactions to it, both in the moment, afterward, and seeing what it's initially offering, it's not something that is worth, at least to me, to upgrade to a 15 Pro today, or I guess later
No,
in the fall,
definitely not.
just to use the feature. It's something like continuity camera is interesting to me, and that's something that I'm actively using for things like the podcast, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so something like the 14 Pro or my 11 Pro that could do it, great, awesome. But something like
Yeah.
Apple Intelligence, I'm not seeing the benefit yet, besides, I guess, summarization.
Yeah, and I have a 15 Pro, and I agree with that. Like, my phone can run it, and I'm not excited. I'm not interested. There's really nothing there. Maybe it's because I've just gotten used to not using voice assistants all that much.
Yeah.
But especially with generative AI, I'm very skeptical to let it do really anything that helpful. You know, like they tried to pitch on the Rabbit R1. It was like, oh, book an Uber. Oh, plan a trip. You know, book a flight. It's like, no, I'm going to need a screen for that. I'm going to need to see all the little details as their carry-ons. That's not something I want to assistant out, especially if it's going to try to put glue on my pizza and that kind of thing. So,
Right.
yeah.
Imagine your Tesla bot runs Apple Intelligence, and then suddenly your clothes have a whole bunch of glue on them because they weren't. I don't know. I guess the sap wasn't getting off of it, so someone suggested use glue on it while it's in the washing machine, and then all of a sudden your washing machine is now covered in glue on the inside.
From a Reddit comment from 20 years ago. Now,
Right.
he's affecting that. But yeah, that'll never happen. Elon wouldn't put Apple Intelligence on.
From his response,
It'd be Grok.
I'm very
Grok
interested in
powered.
seeing, whatever his response is with Grok, but also just what the future of his relationship with Apple is, because we've already had that confrontation before where he was very much against Apple, and then Tim Cook invited him over to Apple Park. They had a discussion, and Elon came out pretty much saying, yeah, it was a great conversation. I understand where Tim sits. I get it. We're on good terms. And then,
Tim is very persuasive.
like, I don't know, I forget how long ago that was, but now just recently back on the crap list for Apple and Tim Cook for Elon.
Yep.
So
That didn't take too long. He seems to be very happy to bag on them or threaten to boycott them, but I don't think he ever would. No, seeing how often he complains about little things, that man wouldn't last 2 hours on Android. Just walking him through the process of getting used to an Android phone, oh my God, he would have a million things to complain about. So I think he's more likely to make his own phone than he would to switch to Android. He'd probably
right.
sell a bunch of
Imagine
stock and use it to.
I don't know, the X phone that works with Grok as its native AI assistant.
Makes sense. iPhone, X phone.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No,
It's
don't
the different lettering.
not again.
I really want him to do it, actually. I don't think it'd be good, but I do think it'd be funny. It'd be hilarious. Like, I wanted Apple to make a car. Sounds like we're not getting that. But if we could get Elon to make a phone, it would make for some really interesting coverage in the tech community, I think. It would be funny to see someone so, crazy and radical and rich try to break into the smartphone space and be like, this is easy, I can do this, let me do it, and then figure out how complicated all these things really are.
It would be poetic, especially with was it Xpeng or Neo? I forget which one. That was a car company that announced, or no, a phone company that announced a car.
Xiaomi.
Xiaomi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be poetic for an American company to do that as well, in which we didn't get it, like you said, with Apple, but maybe the king of AI robots and mass-produced EVs can do it.
Yeah. There you go.
Who the heck knows?
I just love how anytime online someone pitches the X phone, they try to list all of these advantages it could have, and they always, it's always like Starlink, which makes
Okay,
me laugh.
what do you mean?
It has X. It has the Twitter app built in. Wow, what a great integration!
More bloatware that I don't want.
Right. It's like you can access DMs
Yeah.
and the news. You'll
Every
get
day.
more bot notifications
Gosh,
than
no.
ever.
All your notifications are run through the X Twitter app. And so you either, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just your whole
The
interface.
the Starlink one always makes me laugh because I'm like, well, that would stop working the second you walk inside. So
Hmm.
it,
Since we're on
it's about
the
as useful as the satellite feature.
right, since we're on the Twitter X train right now, what's your
Yeah.
opinion on the whole hiding the likes? Because for me, it's annoying to not see because there's many times when either I see someone tweet about Tello or
Mm.
talk about your stuff or something else, and then it appears in which you either reposted it or liked it. And it's nice being able to see, oh yeah, Drew liked this for some reason. But
Yeah.
if it's just appearing on my feed, I don't get why I'm seeing it, especially with that information being withheld from me.
That's the funny thing is I believe it still sends a notification to the OG poster. So like if you go into your notifications, you see a list of people that it says so all these people liked your post.
Mm-hmm.
But then they advertise it like likes are now private and I'm like, are they though? I mean, they're private to people who aren't involved, but I think the person who made the post can still see who did the like, in which case it doesn't feel that private. I don't know. I remember they were software locking it to a premium feature for a while. They kept saying you could hide your likes if you pay for premium, and I was like, what? Why? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you have to gain from that? Just liking things that are controversial? But then again, the person who posts it can see that you liked it, so it's really not that private unless they change how that algorithm works. It's like you don't even. It would change the fundamental notification to 50 accounts liked this post instead of actually showing their names and pictures. So yeah, I don't. Elon claimed, I guess, in a tweet that there was a large spike in activity. So maybe that's the logic of it. Is it increases people's willingness to like things, and that will result in more activity. I don't know. I think there was likely just a huge spike in likes because you were telling everybody about it.
Mm-hmm.
You tell everybody that we changed something with the like button, you'll get a huge surge in likes. I don't know if long term it'll actually change that much, but it's the same thing with like hash flags or when there's a special tweet and they're like they changed the animation on the like button for this event or for this post.
Mm-hmm.
Those tweets also get a ton of likes because people want to see the animation.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily result in that much of a change in performance, but again, that's for like specific hash flags. So if you're just doing it system wide, I'd like if all the likes are private, it's almost like none of them are. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I see Mark Hamill pretty much. He's always up in his hands up in the air over something political and something like that. But he is one who does like using the like button. He enjoys
Yeah,
using the like button as a way to notify people that, hey, I acknowledge that you wanted some recognition from someone that
yeah,
you look up to,
sure,
and I can
right,
easily just press this button. You can see it. But from what he's indicating on his experience or what he's seeing and what other people are telling him, they can't see if he's liking
yeah.
it or not. So I'm not too sure whether your claim is correct or not. I'd have to put out a tweet right now, and then you'd have to like it to see whether.
Well, it gets buried is the problem. I think there's like you get a notification that these 6 accounts have liked your post,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says and 40 others. So I guess it would be hard to catch Mark Hamill's tweet because it would get buried
Okay, maybe we should
or
test
his
this out
like.
now. Then I'm gonna make a post, and you can like
I'll
it,
show
and
you.
we'll see if that works or not.
Well, no, it's just you don't even have to do that. Like, look at the top of my notifications here. There's like names, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get those little hearts, it sends all these pictures, which I can tap and open up and say like, oh, he liked. But then it'll say like and 99 others.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't quite get to like a full list,
Mm-hmm.
but there are names and pictures that still show to me.
Okay.
But if I made a tweet, it says like this one, for example, it says I have
Yeah,
153 likes. If I tap on that,
I just liked it.
I get a list. Yep, you're at the top.
Oh,
So I have to
okay.
scroll. So if your tweet didn't have a lot of likes, maybe it'd be easy to find Mark Hamill's.
Mm-hmm.
But if your tweet does have a lot of likes, then yeah, you kind of have to actively look for it.
Interesting. I wonder. I wonder what the hubbub is then. Maybe he's making a lot of smoke out of no fire, but maybe there is a valid reason why. But yeah, I also, to respond to your previous statement, yeah, it does drive
Yeah.
more likes, especially for a little bit more taboo or an adult related content that apparently X or Twitter is promoting a little bit more on their site now. So, or maybe not promoting, but or
I hope not. Yeah,
encouraging,
not
but
promoting,
permitting.
but allowing.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
permitting, which is we. I just don't get if there's something you don't want other people knowing you liked.
mm-hmm.
Just don't like it. What's the big deal? I
Yeah.
don't press
Why
the
do you
button.
want to like
You
it?
can
Anyways?
like it in your brain. Yeah.
Do you want to see it later?
I don't really.
If so, take a screenshot then.
Yeah, or there's a bookmark feature.
Yeah.
So
Do people see your bookmarks?
That's private, right? I'm pretty sure no one can see your bookmarks. I'm pretty sure that's always been a private thing, isn't it?
pretty.
Let me
sure.
go to someone else's account.
Yeah, go look at mine. See if you can see my bookmarks.
I will acknowledge there's not many
Sounds good.
advantages to privatizing the likes, but one thing that I do like is it cleans up the tiles when you go to someone's profile. It's just
Yeah.
posts, replies, media. That's a little cleaner. But I'm grasping at straws here. There's not a lot of advantages to it in my head.
Unless you're a brand, then I guess you have a highlight tab as well. But I get it, but at the same time, it is a weird decision. So it was just something
I
I
agree.
was interested in getting your opinion on because
Yeah, good
you are
question.
now being the social media manager of a startup. So it does
Yeah.
directly affect, well, maybe, yeah, I guess it kind of does. Does and doesn't directly affect what your feedback or experience is on the website when something changes, like the like button.
Yeah, it was definitely something I remember people using to track news in the past. They were like, "Oh, so and so suggested this to the company, and then Elon or whoever liked it."
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people use that as a sign of approval or a
Oops.
sign of their
The,
that tweet must
the
be
Elon
onto
like
something.
tracker account can no longer be in what's it
Oh.
called, business anymore.
It's a good question. He's trying to cancel all those tracker accounts. He doesn't like
Doesn't like being
people
tracked.
knowing what he's doing. That you know what? That actually sounds a lot more believable to me. He made this website wide thing because he didn't want people seeing what he liked. So he just said, I can't change the rules just for me. That would look weird. So let's just change it for everybody. I think it will result in a short-term spike in activity, and then it'll fall back to the way it was. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think so. Speaking of tracking, right now, I hinted at this before, and the reason why we're doing a different format on this podcast, switching back to the original format, is my Starlink dish is tracking satellites again instead of sitting
Wow.
up on my roof dormant.
Good job.
Yeah, and I switched back to it temporarily because my fiber internet is down, which made starting
Jeez.
the recording of this podcast a little bit tenuous, but we got it figured out by just turning on the Starlink switch, I guess.
So is it still down right now?
Yep.
You know?
There's a red LED staring at me in the face right now. I've been
Man.
not really too happy with Frontier in the past. I don't know how long it's been, 2 or 3 weeks now that I've had fiber or whatever. But
Well, they've always been bad
yes.
from the beginning.
So, yeah, they were already bad at the beginning with just exorbitant prices for not so good speeds. And then also being down, like several times it's down, or they just don't tell you that there is a increase in speeds on your plan. We just didn't turn on because you didn't tell us that you wanted it to turn on or whatever. You didn't tell us to make it faster, but you didn't know, and we didn't let you know. Anyways, was it last week, I think, Frontier told me, because I had a red LED as again on my Aero
Yeah.
router, I contacted
Yeah.
them asking what's wrong, and they said, well, let's go through the troubleshooting. Let's unplug it, replug it back in. Did that, and it worked. It went back to being fine.
Okay.
I think they sent, I think they sent a reboot command from their end. But afterward, the technician or support staff told me, you've got a whole bunch of devices connected to this thing, and this will just keep on happening because you have a whole bunch of devices connected to it. And I told her, why is that a thing? Like, that's never been an issue on any other internet that I've been connected to, pretty much ever since, I guess, the early days of internet, when it was like
Right.
you had to have a modem and a router in some cases with Charter or whatever. And even so, you didn't actually have that many devices in your house that were Wi-Fi enabled. So it wasn't real. It was an edge case for a lot of those early day or early
Yeah.
internet day problems. So
Right.
yeah, the staff told me it's because you have too many devices. You should probably buy another router that can help support all these
Jeez.
devices. I don't have that many devices. I mean, they keep on quoting
No.
it's like 22 or whatever. I'm only actively using maybe 5 or 6. And then the other
Yeah.
16 or 17 or whatever are just maybe pinging the internet for smart device technology of just waiting for a command to turn on, turn off, or something else. They're not actively using the internet that much.
Right.
So
If anything, that I could understand it slowing down the router, but it shouldn't go off. You know, it shouldn't be completely out.
right, but it's gigabit internet speeds, in which that's
Yeah.
the fiber internet going to the cable, or not the cable, the router, and then the router has to do a
Yeah.
lot of that processing. I get that, but then that's just telling me
Right.
the router's not a good router, because my Starlink router was able to support all of my devices without an issue. Frontier's was it cable router that I had before that was able to do it without any issue. And then, like I said, all the
Weird.
other Wi-Fi or I guess internet companies that I've had in the past, it's not been a problem. So it makes me wonder what's going on. Anyways, a couple weeks later, flash forward to, I guess, yesterday, it had a red LED on again. And so instead of going through the support, I just decided to
Right.
unplug it and replug it in again, thinking, I don't want to go through this again. Let's see if I can fix it on my own. Unplug it, replug it back in. Went back to normal. I thought, wonderful. I fixed
Wow.
it, but how many times am I going to have to do this?
Yep. I did that a lot growing up.
Right. So then it did it again this morning. And I figured, okay, it's another one of these problems. Let me unplug it and replug it back in. Still stayed red. And so I wondered, okay, this one's
Okay.
something else is going on. So I called them, or I didn't even call them. I used the online chat this time. I didn't feel like talking on the phone, which is nice. It's nice having options like that.
Yeah.
They told me to unplug and replug a different box that's located in the garage that serves as kind of like a throughput between the box that manages the fiber and then the communication between that box and the Wi-Fi router here in the house. So I unplugged that throughput box in between and replugged it back in after 30 seconds. And the technician told me, it seems like your service is down in your area. So turns out it's a service problem. So I thought, okay, great, wonderful, whatever. When is it going to be back online? They said 24 to 48 hours, maybe. And I thought,
Maybe.
great. So I asked, do you have a better window? And they said no. I then get a letter. I'm not going to show it on the camera, but I got the mail this morning as well. And I got a letter saying on April 14th, we detected unauthorized access to some of our internal IT systems. And our investigation identified your personal information among the data that was affected by this incident.
Oh, gosh.
So there's a data breach in my personal information in which they said date of birth, social security number, and your name have been leaked. So
Why would they have your social?
I don't remember giving them my social, but apparently they do have it.
Weird.
Another curious thing, this was in April. I don't recall getting this
my
fiber
gosh.
until May, so they somehow kept my information back from when I used to have Frontier Cable when I first moved into this house.
Oh, brother.
So
Oh, my gosh.
now
This creates a very annoying situation because I'm no longer jealous, for one. Now you know my suffering with internet
I think
inconsistency,
everyone does at this
but
point, Drew. From
yes.
you've well
Well,
documented
most
it.
people, I feel like most people on the internet I talk to just have perfectly stable fiber 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and never have any problems
Mm-hmm.
for $4 a month. And they live down the street from me. But because I live on this one street in America that doesn't have fiber, I have to deal with all this crapola. But if you continue having the inconsistencies like this, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna cancel Frontier and just go all in on Starlink, or continue to have both and just I'll take the fiber when it's working, and then when Frontier is being screwy, I'll switch back to Starlink,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of expensive to have both, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't know. Turning it on this morning was a little bit of a drag because it's another $120 out of my pocket going towards internet that is not to my liking, but somehow has been
Mm-hmm.
dependable. I've depended on it for the
Yeah.
last 2.5 to 3 years, I think. About 2.5. Yeah, about 2.5 years. So it is dependable from my experience compared to hard hardware that's connected by wire underground or above ground on towers or anything else, which is slightly hilarious. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. They did offer something, whether it's like free credit monitoring or something else. I do want to talk with them on the phone and ask, hey, can I get at least, I don't know, a couple months off of my bill because you got my
Oh,
data
totally.
leaked? Like, this is
You should
ridiculous.
definitely ask that. Well, not even that, just for having an outage. I mean, I've done that with T-Mobile several times where I had outages and
I
just
get that
said,
as well.
"Hey, it's down, so this is unacceptable. I want a discount." Or usually, if I notice if I contacted T-Mobile directly, they wouldn't help me at all. But
Mhm.
T-Mobile Home Internet has a specific customer service line, and whenever I complain to them, they tend to give me a free month if
Right.
there's an outage.
I mean, I get that, and
So
it depends how
they've been
long the
helpful.
outage is as well. Someone
Mm-hmm.
someone on the internet put it pretty well. I think it was probably on Reddit that I got this information, but they were
Mm-hmm.
also one of these customer support or technician guys on the other side of the phone that are receiving these calls, and
Yeah.
pretty much when people ask for like a discount or a refund or anything like that, they tell them pretty much, well, if we're going to give you a fair discount, you've had an outage for maybe a minimum of a day or something like that, and your bill is X amount of dollars. You divide
So
that
they want to
by,
prorate.
yeah, well, you pretty much, they do the math. It's like, all right, you were missing 1 day of internet. So then we take that day out, or like you pretty much take that cost of internet a day. Like, how much are you
You
paying
get
for
a
internet a day?
discount of $1.50 or
Pretty
something.
much is what I'm getting at. They're pretty much saying, "Do you want
Yeah.
me to cut you a check for $1.50 or something like that?" I can
I
do
would
it.
say
But
yes, just to screw with them. I wouldn't even cash the check. I just want to waste their time.
yeah, because they're wasting your time pretty much, and I get
Do
that.
you want a check for 60 cents? Yes, I do.
So that's something I will probably call them about. If the internet's not back by this afternoon or evening, I'll call them tonight or tomorrow and say, "Hey, it's been a whole day. I'm paying 60 something dollars for this service. You said it was going to be great. Yeah, you're not promising full speeds, but it is fiber internet. So there is a level of expectation for what I'm paying should be quality
Yeah.
service for the entire time that I've got it installed and paying for it. So
Yeah. And I'd say you
give me the
use it for
service.
work.
Mm-hmm.
It affects your livelihood.
Yeah, I can't work today.
And
I
I
was
would
planning
ask,
on working
right,
today, and I can't
there you
because
go.
I mean I could drive to the office, but I've got other commitments that I already planned around my schedule for today, catching
Yeah.
up on chores,
You paid
doing the
for internet.
podcast.
You thought you'd have the internet so that you could work. They're the ones on the hook here. So I would definitely ask for a free month, and they might not give it to you, but it can't hurt to ask. And
Sure.
but I I still think it's frustrating. I'm totally with you. Like I hate that. I have another customer service story that I'll save for the EV podcast, but
Oh no.
still when people tell you like, well, you got to fight them, you got to call them, and I'm like, I don't have the time
No.
to like argue with people and be put on hold, or why didn't you escalate it? And it's like, because I don't have all day. I've got people counting on me. I've got things to do. I don't
I got
have.
better things to do
Maybe
in
if
my
I
life.
was Yes. Now that I'm maybe if I'm old and retired and didn't have work going on and didn't travel very much or have, you know, friends or family in town and stuff, I would be fine just wasting as much of their time or fighting them as much as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't have to do that. I agree.
It's
And
again should
sometimes,
versus reality, but yeah, I get it,
yeah.
and it's frustrating, and
Hmm.
reality is often disappointing with some of its inconsistencies and what's the word that I'm looking for? Pretty much its detriments and all that. Its
Yes,
shortfalls, I
very
guess, is the
much.
word that I'm trying to get at.
Hmm.
But it doesn't make sense when you're advertising in email, on phone number, in mail, physical mail, and
Hmm.
websites and ads and whatever else saying fiber internet, this many speeds, you're
Hmm.
paying this much, buy our service, and then you get the service, and you have this trouble of, oh, the Wi-Fi box just keeps on shutting off because,
Yeah.
quote unquote, there's too many devices connected to it, and then, oh, there's an outage in your area, even though nothing has happened in my area as far as I can tell, because I drive by
Hmm.
that line where it's suspended for most of my drive into town because that's the direct route for stringing a fiber line from a metropolitan area to where I'm at in the Bay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it only makes sense. When I'm driving, I don't see. I mean, maybe there is some slight abrasions that I'm not seeing, I guess, because I'm not actively looking on the ladder every single square foot. But
Sure.
it is a little bit annoying seeing that there's nothing changed. There's not any trees or cars hitting these lines or poles that have the fiber
There's
wire.
some squirrels just chewing on it.
I
Now you.
wouldn't doubt it. The little devils are all over the place, and it is just terrible. But
Ending
it's
everyone's
a big
internet.
frustrating experience because it's great. I've got fiber, but no, I don't because the connection's down due to the router or due to
Oy.
outage issues. One other thing that the staff said is, was there like a power outage in your area recently? I said, yeah, I guess there was. And she's like, oh, that could affect the box. I'm like, yeah, in terms of power, it's not going to be getting signal, but with all my other internets, that was never an issue. Why? I guess because of fiber, it's a little more complex, and you need this box in between two communicating devices. But even still, it's just, why is that?
Yeah, but it came back. The power's back.
Yeah, the power's
So.
back. I mean, do I need to unplug and replug everything all the time just to make sure? Oh, it's a reset, even though that the outage already did
Mm.
that by turning off and turning back. I don't know. It's
I don't
frustrating.
remember where. I don't remember what brand it was, but I think they mentioned it once on the Rooster Teeth podcast. There was this accessory that specifically connected to your internet that was just a power plug
Mm-hmm.
for your router, and it would just send a very small amount of data to maintain is there an internet connection, and if the internet connection was dropped, it would instantly shut the power off that outlet to kill the router
Mm-hmm.
and then boot it back up. So it's like so many router situations or networking issues were solved by turning it off and turning it back on that they actually made hardware that just did that job. So it's like
Right.
if the internet drops, turn the power off and turn it back on just for this plug. And I was like, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, I guess a
what
little of a side,
will
or
they
a bit
think
of a
of?
side tangent. My previous refrigerator that I had. Shout out to y'all that were asking for a refrigerator update. Samsung refrigerator's still great, but with my old refrigerator, whenever the power would turn off and turn back on, it had a notification alarm on it for, I guess, the panel
Yes.
that had the selection for ice, water, and whatever else, and it would just
Yeah.
scream for I don't know how long. If you're gone for all day, I'm sure it'd just scream for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty much beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
constantly. And so if you're home and this
Uh-huh.
happens, it's very annoying to you're like, yes, I get it. The power's back on or the power's off or whatever. I guess if the power's off, it's not making a sound. But when the power comes back on, it makes this sound. You're like, yes, I get it. You're back on. You don't have to alert me that the panel's on. I need to hit
Yep.
the lock button or something else. annoying that devices like routers or some of these particular refrigerators need to be babysat whenever the power gets turned on for it. And
Yep.
you have to,
I know
power
exactly what
cycle
you
it or
mean.
press a button or something. It's design good products to where it's got the intent of working after an outage rather than, you have to go through this whole troubleshooting scenario or
Right.
having to hit a bunch of buttons to confirm, yes, the power's
Yep.
back on, proceed as normal.
That's been the story with our microwave, which is for the most part it's an okay microwave. I like how huge it is, but it's beeper, like you said, does that annoying thing where if you put the food in and you heat it up, but you don't go and get it, it'll just every 30 seconds it'll beep again.
You've got
But
food.
luckily there's food. It's cooling off now, and it's like I'll get there. Shut up. But it beeps way too loud. So luckily there's a setting that lets you shut off all the sound, so
Really?
it won't beep at all.
That's unheard of in microwaves,
Yeah,
by the way.
I agree. That's why I was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Now it doesn't beep at all for any reason, and it's great. I'm like, yeah, I can hear the microwave anyway when it's operating. I'll know when it's off, and then I'll go get it. But just like you said, when the power shuts off, if we have an outage and then it comes back, now it starts beeping again. So I'm like, I got to go through the settings in the menu and turn the sound back off. But yeah,
This
I'm,
is the
I'm glad
perks that
there's at
you
least
get,
an option.
audience, when you live in California. Is all your smart devices, or not even smart devices, even dumb devices, start screaming at you
Yeah.
after an outage due to a fire or pretty much just PG&E being a scumbag company and shutting off the power for no reason.
Yes. I have to give some credit though. We haven't had an outage in quite a while. It's been I don't know if there's been one this year actually, from what I can
Lucky you.
remember.
I've had, I think, 2 or 3.
It's been fairly stable.
I live in the Bay
Yeah.
Area and I've had 2 or 3 outages, Drew. It's ridiculous. I'm paying ridiculous
I would've-
prices for my house and
Yeah.
for groceries and for everything else in the area. And I'm still getting outages.
Well, not that it makes it any better, but the sad thing is I think that's kind of everywhere. Feels like everything has gotten more expensive. I don't think there's any area where rent or utilities have gotten cheaper in the more recent history. Everything's
Virginia,
been kind
maybe?
of on the rise. Mississippi.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Alabama.
probably much higher than it was a year ago, even in the much cheaper places.
Yeah, probably. I hear of like fast
It's just a
food in like
sucky world.
Alabama or Mississippi or something like that still being like $2 for a burger.
What?
And all that.
No way.
I know, right? I saw it somewhere. Someone's like, "Oh yeah, I just picked up some Burger King the other day. Only paid like
But
$5 or less."
then you have to live there.
Well, yes.
That you're paying for it in another way. You
Right.
get some sweet weather down where you are. Weather's lovely down there, and up here, I had to leave for work super early in the morning a couple days ago, and I woke up and it was 90 degrees at like 4 a.m. Sun wasn't even out yet. It was pitch black, stars in the sky, and it was still 90 degrees. And I was like, this is outrageous. This is ridiculous. So I think everywhere has pros and cons. And the longer you live there, the more you find the cons and forget the pros.
Yeah. I don't know, Drew.
Put that on a shirt. You'll forget all the things you like, or you'll find all the things you like about the place you live if you move away. You'll be like, oh yeah, that part was kind of nice. I missed that part.
Yeah, that was something that I noticed when I went on a road trip last year. Was I did miss some things. We went through many cities, and I thought, yeah, the city's great and all, but it would be nice if this was here, or if it was set up
Right.
this way, or something else.
Yeah,
Definitely not in terms of
exactly.
I don't know, transportation, because a lot of America doesn't have that public transportation.
LA is the worst, I think,
Yes,
I've ever seen.
agreed.
I've been to many cities, and I think that the transportation system has failed the most in Los Angeles.
Yep. I'd have to
It's
spend a
really
little bit
bad.
more time in Dallas, but I might say it might be on par or maybe just a little bit below in terms of complications and spaghetti junctions of road systems just colliding all over the place, and it just becomes
Right.
a gridlock at certain
Yeah.
hours to where you're just not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
whether you want to or not.
No. Every
But
time I go through there, it's like, yeah, all the public transportation stuff. I I agree with specifically for that city. It's like just too many people, way too close a place, uh, and all these things yet somehow are spread out and too close together. It's just like no rhyme or reason.
right.
A
At least
big
I can
mess. Whereas there's
calculate it
other
all
places
on the
where
iPad.
yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Although not a lot of changes to maps this year.
I think they focused a lot more on trails, which probably took a lot of effort because trails aren't as logical, I would say, as roadways.
Yeah, you can make your own trails, right?
Right, and you can also get turn-by-turn hiking navigation, I think, on the watchOS as well. So
Wow.
probably a lot of that, including distance and routes and everything else that's tracking for workouts and everything else. There's probably a lot of effort into trail navigation, which is probably why maps didn't get as much love and attention as we've seen in the past.
This reminds me, I'm glad we're talking about this because I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, how does it make you feel that your current watch will not get watchOS 11?
Right, because I have the wonderful Series 5 sitting right here.
I think that's too soon. I think they cut off way too much for what they added. I didn't feel like they added much to watchOS 11 and yet ended support for the 4, 5, and the SE1.
Right. I'm not too hurt by it, to be honest, especially with the updates that they were showing off at WW or Triple V.
You don't feel like you're missing much.
More modifiable check-ins. I've never used check-ins because my wife usually knows where I am either by my Find My on my phone or by the car. So she can easily identify where I am and it's not going to be an issue for if I'm going to the grocery store. My schedule is really predictable these days. So for her, the whole check-in process isn't necessary, and or she could just text and ask, and typically my phone's in my pocket ready to respond. But stuff like training load or effort rating, or I guess the turn-by-turn hiking navigation like we mentioned before. Yeah. Was I going to use it? Probably not. Is it a feature that would be nice to have? Sure. I guess. But I'm not.
How do you feel about pausing streaks?
I'm not.
You think that's a good idea?
So for those who have seen me in videos or photos, I'm not the most fitness inclined. I don't. I guess I don't fit it into my schedule. So
I'm not either, but I do think it's an interesting debate. I've heard people suggest it, and other people say
it was already a feature before, though,
like
for like a couple of days. Or you
was it?
Yes, it was something I believe on, like how you mentioned the Rooster Teeth podcast, on Bernie Burns' new podcast. Was it Morning Somewhere, or wherever they runs with his wife. They were talking about this, and pretty much you can pause it and shift days in a way pre watchOS whatever version we're on. So
really?
That was already possible, but I think what they've done is made it a little bit easier to access or a little bit more
and I think
expansive.
You can pause for longer.
Yes. So that's what I was getting at. It's a little bit more expansive in regards to how long you can pause it. So it's great for if you have scheduled cheat days and or
cheap months.
Cheap months, I guess. Well, let's just say you get surgery. You don't want your streak to be killed because you got surgery. And if it's going to take you a month or two to recover from it, whether it's minor or major surgery, it depends. It would be nice to build that in if you are fitnessly inclined and want to maintain that streak and you don't want a physical handicap to stop that streak, which is understandable.
I just feel like it kind of... I understand the want for the streak to continue, but don't you feel like it kind of disregards what the point of streaks are?
Yes, it turns into an abusive tool, right?
Yeah, like they should require a doctor's note. Like, if you want to pause your streak for more than 2 days, you need to submit medical confirmation. I don't know, because like, here's all I picture, right? Someone who's really competitive and really wants to set a good streak. obviously neither of us, someone else. And someone else works out every day, closes all their rings, and does a run or whatever for.
There you go.
There, he's got
Michael's sick. Doctor, because of course doctors have terrible handwriting.
Yeah. Mike made his own doctor's note for those audio listeners.
So I can show that to the watch
is,
or the phone, and the phone will recognize, oh, yes, this is definitely not a sticky note, a doctor's note.
It knows your handwriting from the Apple Pencil, remember?
No!
Everything is shared. He goes, that's not a doctor. You have to get a specifically different handwriting.
I can't even use Apple Intelligence.
Some guy
Go ahead.
Who's really, yeah, that's true. Who's really passionate about his streak could work really hard for 2 months straight. But you're telling me the same guy, or no, a different guy who's competing with him could put on a 1 month break and still have the same streak as the guy who never skipped a day. Like,
yes.
Should there be a fine print of like, his streak continued, but he took half of the days off?
I think for someone who's close to you, there's probably that understanding of, oh yes, I know that so-and-so did get surgery and or we're going through difficult times, so I shouldn't measure up too much to them, even though technically, quote-unquote, they might have won in terms of this competition.
It's like, he did a 2 month streak and so did he, but he did it better.
I think adding an asterisk saying there was a few pauses in the streak for this person's fitness challenge would be a great footnote for I guess these fitness competitions, whether it is a third-party app or it's I guess maybe that'll come in the next watchOS, but was it Marquez was highlighting it on group fitness challenges? I don't think are a thing on watchOS.
No, not really.
I feel like that should be coming next year because it didn't come this year and it felt very sparse for watchOS.
Very. Much more sparse than usual. Like, I feel like even in the past, there's 1 or 2 watchOS features you can kind of highlight and say, this was the big one. And this year it was like,
Vitals.
I really don't know.
Interactive widgets. Vitals. Redesigned photo faces that you can change the color gradient on.
Double Tap is now available to developers, which is
right. Double Tap API. Does that affect me at all? Not really.
It still should be on older watches. We know for a fact they can do it.
New views for pregnancy. Oh, that's wonderful for me as a male.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I just think that it should be a bit more strict on the pauses. Like,
I agree.
On the activity, like pause your rings on the webpage, it says you can now put your rings on pause for a day, week, month, or more to keep your award streak going.
1 whole year.
That's where my complaint is. How many freaking months? My point is, if we're going to do that thing where, okay, he did a streak, but he had some off days, there should just be a cutoff where you lose it. I don't think it should be like weeks or months. I should feel like, okay, 2 days off is understandable, but if you need more than 2 days off, we're just going to say you lost the streak because it's too complicated to say he took a month off in the middle of his 2 month streak. That's, to me, that's just too much fine print, too much like, okay, well, he took 4 days off and he took 8 days off. It's like, no. Let's just, it's not a streak, okay, at that point. 1 or 2 cheat days I could maybe understand, but weeks to months is like, no, that's not a streak anymore, in my opinion. But
I'm more of the mindset of just adding a footnote is probably good enough because this probably is a very terrible comparison, but
okay,
the whole
let's hear it.
The whole free speech idea of, let's just say Randy says, I am an engineer. I guess this is a good example. Randy saying I'm an engineer, and then me sitting there with an engineering diploma saying BS. I have a bachelor's of science in engineering. What do you have? And then he's like, well, I do audio engineering. And it's like, yes, that is a form of engineering. Granted, yes. But do you have a degree in it? Well, I got a license or whatever. Or not a license, but accreditation from some online school or something else. Okay, fine. That's great. But there is that footnote I would probably put underneath Randy, not to bash Randy at all in this at all, but
No, we're definitely
a
bashing.
footnote saying, yes, he is doing audio engineering, but he does not have a degree in engineering. So to call, I mean, even myself, I can't technically call myself an engineer, which is funny.
What?
I can't call myself an engineer. I have a bachelor's of science in engineering, but I can't call myself an engineer. I have to get a what's it called?
You can.
No, I have to get a license, a professional engineering's license, which requires me to do some extra brain work and effort to get this license, which then I have to renew every, I think, 5 years or whatever to have. But in the work that I do, I don't need a PE or professional engineering license or whatever. I don't need that for a lot of the work that I do, or all the work that I do. So
Wow.
for a lot of that, I don't.
Where's my soundboard?
You don't have it here. Ha!
So what I'm hearing you say is neither of you are engineers.
Oh my gosh. No, what I'm saying is adding a footnote is probably more than enough for this situation for fitness competitions, because in that it's like community notes in a way. It's a great idea for disseminating knowledge, or at least clarifying someone's or some
Added
software's.
context.
Yeah, it's just add context. That's a great way to put it. So same thing can
change
go.
my
Oh no.
official role at Tello to social media engineer after this episode.
Social engineer.
Is it? Not we dropped
He's
the media.
socially
just social
engineering. Tello's.
That's kind of what it is.
My God.
Isn't that what marketing is in a way?
Yes, it's all. Everything is quote unquote engineering. It's you digging deep into something, but then if everything's engineering, is
Trying to manipulate people. That's the most negative, hostile way to phrase it. Marketing is just manipulating people in a way that you like.
Social
So is
engineering.
lobbying, I suppose. It's social engineering. So
Yep.
we're all engineers in a way.
Exactly.
This is
And that's what I
engineering
land
podcast.
on to, I guess, for that conversation that Randy and I had a while back. We did dig into this offline, and we settled on that very same thing of engineering. You can ascribe anything to the engineering role. Social engineering.
What is the definition?
The definition of engineering, because there are definitions for these things. Engineering definition.
Why does Google need to know my location? Because I'm asking.
Right. The branch of science and technology concerned with design, building, and use of engines, machines, and structures. That's
Oh.
not
what I got.
necessarily. Well, that's what dictionary gave me from the Oxford languages.
This is from TWI Global. It says engineering is the application of science and maths to solve problems. While scientists and inventors come up with innovations, it is engineers who apply these discoveries to the real world. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that definition?
It makes me feel like a superhero at this point. But
How to become an engineer? I wonder.
well, here's another. So the noun version is more derivative of science and technology. The verb version of it is design and building, or skillfully or artfully arranging for an event or situation to occur. So the verb version of engineering is more ascribed to maybe what you and Randy do for audio and social engineering. But the noun version of it is more ascribed to what I do as my professional work life.
Interesting.
So, I mean, then you could
Okay.
say, well, isn't social media derived by branches of science and technology, specifically technology,
Accountants are financial engineers.
right? Or what's another one? What's another hilarious one? Artists.
Cash register working.
Sure, that too. They are
Paint engineers.
painters are engineers. Well, was it Randy's whole Randy Nexus thing? Is his whole definition is the art and
Fulcrum between art and tech.
yeah, that's what his whole idea is behind his channel. So even he acknowledges that Venn diagram of engineering as a term that you can apply to many different things. So my point being, getting back to the topic, adding context helps with things such as ascribing yourself to some role and or ascribing, or not, I'm using ascribing a bunch in this podcast, but
It's the
defining
new per
what
se.
truly was a streak for yourself or
Yes.
someone else. I mean, technically, you're invalid. Wouldn't you be invalidating a streak if you flew from like North America to Australia because you're pretty much skipping a day? So it's
There's
all
an
relative.
argument to be made.
It's all
Yeah,
relative in
I
regard.
think.
We need time zones in these community notes, or I
Yeah,
guess footnotes for
that's
streaks.
why I was gonna say a day or two. I understand keeping a streak. If you just said I had a day or two off, but
Okay.
if we start getting into the weeks and months, that's what I'm like. I wouldn't consider it a streak at that point for whatever. Even if it's a genuine, like my legs were cut off. It's like okay, but
That's so terrible for you, Drew. I'm sorry to hear that.
like, couldn't you just take the cheat days all at the end? So you could have a 1 month streak and then take a month off and then the streak ends. And you'd consider it a 2 month streak, even though you technically haven't done anything since a month ago.
That's why I
I
think
don't know.
maybe
Two,
duration makes sense for the duration of time that you were actually physically active in these cases. So it's not
yeah,
necessarily the time between start and end of tracking. It's more of
yeah,
the amount of time that was filled or utilized for physical activity that was tracked. Whether it was,
okay,
oh, I moved and stood for X amount of minutes or hours or whatever, and even so, it doesn't do it right on the watch. I stand at my standing desk at work, and it still says, hey, you should probably stand. Yes, I'm standing.
yeah.
Let me move my arms around a little bit more to show you that I am standing, which I could do the same while I'm sitting.
They need Apple Intelligence for that.
Yeah, let's put Apple Intelligence in there. Why not? Put in everything.
The
We're already
Series
doing that.
10, the Series 10 will have a chip that can handle Apple Intelligence, but the Series
You think
9
so?
and the Ultra 1, Ultra 2, they're just too slow. It's just the trend. It feels like every year Apple does this more and more, and I don't like it. So I'm just going to expect it to continue at this point. They're going to come up with more and more things that are like, you need the new watch to do this.
I'm willing to forgive them only because the calculator app did come out for iPadOS. And that was probably like my third favorite thing that was announced in this was probably I agree with Randy with his statement is that this is probably one of my most favorite dubs.
Wow. Both of you. Yeah. I mean, I guess because you got what you wanted, that should make it pretty noteworthy. They almost like listened to our one of our last shows before Dub Dub and did exactly what you were suggesting, which was pretty cool. But
Right.
I liked the way it was announced. It was very well paced and well shot and everything. I didn't like everything that was announced. As far as the actual announcements, the actual changes to the OSs, I was pretty disappointed with a lot of things. But yeah, the presentation itself, the jokes, the intro was really great.
The intro is one of my
The
most favorite
transitions were
intros ever shown in an Apple keynote. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know who
Was
Phil
good.
is. I wasn't around watching Apple when Phil was around, but it was funny seeing this guy who
a
used to
very
be associated with
long-term,
Apple just
yeah.
being like, I'm too old for this, and then queuing up a popular song on an old iPod. And then everyone
Yes.
dropping out over Apple Park.
That was fun. Well, that's one thing that I didn't pick your brain on that we could end on is how do you feel about apps being able to go anywhere and the theme colors for all the home screens? Like, are you going to customize it or are you going to pretty much leave your phone the same?
I don't know, honestly. It's probably I'm on the fence post or fence
Okay.
I'm on the fence whether I would
Yeah.
lean more towards customization or not. I have, of course, my can't show because my phone is a camera right now. I can't mirror it right now because I don't have. I'm not doing the
The
beta.
mirroring won't work either.
I'm waiting until
You could.
it comes. No, I'm not going to. But I'm gonna wait until it comes
I'm
out
not going
officially. But it would be interesting to see if there is room for that because how I set up my phone is I've got or I guess 3 pages. I've got the front page that I kind of use as like utilities and all that. It's got the settings app.
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of other stuff that is more utility focused to the phone. And then there's the second
Right.
page, which has, I think, a photo widget and something else. But then all these apps
Mm-hmm.
and folders that are categorized by social media, entertainment, productivity, something else. So a lot of different folders in there. And then the third uh, screen or whatever it is meant for apps that are just kind of throwaway apps that I don't really care about or maybe
Yeah.
access maybe once a year. So
That's normal, I think.
yeah,
That's what people
so trying to
tend to do.
fit in, um, I don't know, changing the color would be interesting. Being able to tie that to times of day would be nice. Almost like not necessarily just day
Mm,
mode and night mode, but like here's what it is in the morning section of my day. Here's what is in the afternoon section of my day. Here's what is in the evening of my day.
right.
That would be great to have those dichotomies or differences. Kind of like how every hour my wallpaper changes based off of, or I guess just grabbing a different photo from my photo library and posting it there. And it's nice to see a different photo. I like that refresh just to see, oh yeah, I was in Utah at one point,
Sure.
or oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
got to see a
fun.
rocket launch. That was great. So stuff like that I like.
It's a
So
good widget.
yeah, adding that to the home screen would be great. So maybe it's blue in the morning, or no, blue at night, but then maybe orange in the
Mm,
morning, green during the day, yellow in the evening.
there you go. I like
So
that
maybe,
idea. I've
so.
actually tried to emulate. This sounds insane, but I've tried to emulate the exact same lock screen setup I've had since I first owned an iPod Touch
Mm-hmm.
because I loved the native wallpaper and the native app layout, and it was always like camera, calendar, photos, mail, and it always just had. It wasn't a full row of apps. There was always a little space, but then settings was just at the very bottom. So over the years, the stuff in between has changed a bit, but I like the top row to be the same, the settings to be by itself,
Mm-hmm.
and then the dock. And I think when I get iOS 18, I need to rethink it. I'm like, you know what? This is a good opportunity for me to come up with a better home screen layout. I've been trying to keep it the same for like a decade
Mm-hmm.
now or more, and it's time to change it up a bit. So
Sure.
I think I want to put more apps near the bottom so they're easier to reach, more
Yes,
widgets near the top, and I'm definitely getting rid of the app labels. I was super excited about that, and I didn't
that was really
know
cool.
it during the event. I found out about it after, and I was like, oh, yes, I do want that. I hate those labels.
Right, I
They are
know what it
pointless to
is
me.
until they
I can see
change the
it.
logo for some reason, which doesn't happen often. Which I
Yeah.
guess you can get by with it. But it would be funny suddenly an app changes their logo and color. You've got no clue what
Hmm.
it is because it doesn't have a name on
You're
it.
like, you just open it if you don't know, I guess. But yeah,
Right. Yeah.
start way too repetitive information, and it'll look much cleaner. So I'm excited to try it out, but I use my phone for too much work related stuff right now, so I'm hesitant to put any beta software on it. Whereas in years prior, I didn't care as much. This year, I care a lot because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are relying on me now. So I'm like, okay, you stay stable. Although I bet the beta wouldn't be that bad from what I've heard. It's still just the principle of the thing.
No. Does this make you wish that you maybe kept some previous phones that are able to support this new version of iOS?
Mm, I mean, in in the short term, it would be kind of handy just to have like a second phone to play around with the software. But
Mm-hmm.
the way I think of it is whatever I sold those old phones for, would you pay that to access iOS 18 early? You know, if I sold that old phone for $600 or $500, would you pay $500 just to use iOS 18 a few months before launch? I would not, personally. I don't think it's worth it. It'd be much easier for me to just
There
meet
could
up
be a
with
trade
one of my
off.
friends in town.
Being able to make a video for the beta could get that back if it was a hit.
I don't think you need to run the beta to make a video about it, personally.
True.
Like, you could basically my whole follow-up video earlier in the week was here's all of my favorite things about iOS 18 that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about. because of the event, leaving out all these little details, and then I didn't have to install the beta, but I still found out thanks to the internet, and I just link everybody that I say, so-and-so found this, so-and-so found this. And the spoiler alert, I'm not going to make that money back. I wouldn't make more than, I doubt I would make more than $500-$600 on a video that
It was just about the beta.
is just about iOS 18 day one beta update.
Sure.
But maybe it'd be different if I was a bigger channel, or I took sponsorships.
Yeah, makes sense to me. My final thought is I wish you kept the Vision Pro so I could compare the Bora Bora environment that was added to it. The only good feature, in my opinion, that was added to Vision Pro and Vision OS 2 or whatever. Because I've been to Bora Bora and I know exactly the sounds, the sights, the smells. I've got photos of it as well on my old... did I have a Pixel at the time? Or did I have an iPhone? I forget. I think I had an iPhone because my buddies bullied me into getting iOS. But,
that was Randy, and you know it.
It was not
He's
Randy.
social engineered.
I'm not going to call him out, but it was a group of engineering friends who were like, hey, we want to have you in the group chat, but you're making our group chat green bubble. Make it blue. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was real.
That's terrible. I would not do it.
Hey, be thankful. It means that when I came onto these podcasts, I had most of the hardware necessary for easy integration. Besides, I guess I started on the Surface, but whatever.
It'd probably be more interesting if you weren't as into Apple. Then we'd have more things to...
We'll talk about it in the next
butt heads
podcast, but
on.
there is a phone that I'm looking at that does look very appealing. So
That's not an iPhone.
It's not an iPhone. I'll let the audience think about
Okay.
it, and it's not an Android that you're thinking about. It's something else.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next week. If you're hearing this, everything worked on OBS's end. Thank God. Finally.
Please.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.